What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Finger Wag Podcast. My name is Gideon Hertz. I'm the host of the Finger Wag Podcast. Excited to be back with you with another episode. We're talking to Jake Foote again, diving into part 2 of our roster preview. This week, we're going to talk about the returning faces, the returning guys, how they fit in with the new guys. We talked about those new guys last week. Jake gave you a full breakdown of all of the new faces, and we want to do a little reflection on last season for the returning faces. Not a ton of them played a lot of minutes, but we're going to give you a reflection on those guys and then project forward, think about how they fit in with those new faces and how the roster overall looks. We'll get you ready for Global Jam, the exhibition tournament that the Hoyas will be playing in next week. And if you've not been listening to the podcast, where have you been? Welcome. To get you up to speed on Global Jam, Finger Wag will be on site for Global Jam next week, covering real Hoya basketball. Really excited for that. We'll have more on the pod about Global Jam. We'll also have more on the website, thefingerwag.com. We'll talk also today about Justin Caldwell a little bit and get Jake's perspective on the newest Hoya commit. Lot to get to, excited to break things down. So without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome back, everyone, to the Finger Wag Podcast. I am back here with Jake Foote. What's up, Jake?
Not much, Gideon. Good to talk again. Hope you had a nice weekend.
Yeah, I did. You too.
Yeah, mine was nice.
I don't know about you, I'm getting increasingly excited to see real Georgetown Hoyas basketball in a week or so.
We are in
really
August.
Hoping that it gets picked up by CBS News or CBS Sports again or something, so we can get a little bit of buzz going.
I'm sure the folks of Georgetown Twitter will find some way to get eyes on the game, and we'll also have the Finger Wag there. So I'm sure
Finger Wag will have you covered.
There will be updates provided regardless.
Well, we're going to do part 2 of our roster preview, but before we even jump into that, we have no longer breaking news last week, but Georgetown welcomed its first commit for the 2026 recruiting class, an important class, seems like, particularly because Georgetown opted for the transfer market this year, not bringing in any freshmen. And we know that they are focused on some big fish in the 2026 class, but they bring in Justin Caldwell, 4-star power forward. Got a piece up on thefingerwag.com breaking down a little bit of his recruitment, who he is. Also did a emergency pod last week. Emergency, probably not the right term for that, but whatever. I'm interested in your take on Caldwell. How do you feel about him?
I agreed with a lot of the things that you brought up about him last week when he did make the decision to commit to Georgetown. I do think he should be rated higher than where he is, although those rankings are starting to move up regardless of his injury that he suffered in the spring. I think in the recent 24/7, he's 148. In today's rivals, he was number 120. So definitely pushing on the doorstep of solidified 4-star ranking. I think he's a good fit, though, as a player. He definitely fits maybe more of the old school Cooley in that he used to like to put together more of a versatile, bruising front court. He's kind of got the size to be a 4-5 tweener, although in college I think he's definitely going to be ideally much more of a power forward. But skilled kid, I think he's a good fit.
Yeah, thing that jumped out at me when I started looking at him is he's big. He's big and looks fairly coordinated. Be interested to see if he grows anymore, how he fits in at the college level. I agree with you. He looks like probably a 4, but could also, he's 16, 17 right now, whatever, could grow another inch or two, and then who knows?
Yeah, I think it's his Twitter that lists his measurements as 6'9" with a 7'1" wingspan. I
Yeah.
think previous outlets have estimated him at around 245 pounds. When he was playing in the spring with Washington Warriors prior to the lower body injury, he honestly looked a little lighter than that, especially
Mm.
compared to some of his older YouTube footage, which I think is a good thing. I think he's the type of kid that you'd probably want once you get him into campus to get him a little leaner, a little lighter, a little more mobile on his feet so that he could play the four, be a guy that guards in space. Because offensively, he has a lot of upside on that end at the college level. In the high school level, he's already a pretty darn good post up player, back to the basket, good touch around the rim, has the makings of a face up game, quick jumper around the rim. If he becomes a guy who upticks that athleticism a little bit, could be a really good player.
So I mentioned the 2026 class. We obviously know the big names that Georgetown's on. We got an update again on Jordan Smith Jr. just today from Rivals on 3, whatever they're calling themselves now. Another great quote from him about Ed Cooley said again, "I love Ed." Not saying I love you to any of the other coaches that are recruiting him. I don't know how much you can actually take from that, but Georgetown's still in the mix there, still on Caden Samuels and some of those other small forwards, 3 swing men, Alex Constanza. What do you think, if anything, we can tell from Justin Caldwell's commitment about the 2026 class and where Cooley and staff might be headed?
Well, I definitely think they're trying to do more. This current season was definitely transfer portal heavy, but I think the long-term vision for what he's doing is going to be more reliant on the high school side of things, especially now that the fifth years are getting phased out. I think that was his envision the first time around, that first offseason when he kind of swung and missed on some portal guys and put together a 5-man high school class. It worked out to some extent. Sorber was a real blue chipper, but it also didn't work out in some extent in that you only had Sorber for a year. So he was essentially a glorified transfer in. Now, long term, just the way Cooley runs his program, I'm sure he's much more inclined to keep kids for a couple years on end, be able to develop them from within, be able to supplement his bench from the high school ranks rather than from the transfer ranks. So Caldwell's a good first piece. It'll be interesting to see how they approach it from this point forward, whether they go real hard on some of those guys in the 50 to 100 range or 40 to 100 range, like those Luca Fosters, Jaden Hodges. I think they said they were getting an official visit from Alex Egbuonu, who, forgive me if I'm pronouncing the last name wrong, but he plays for BABC and had a really good spring. Or if he holds off on totally pursuing guys of that ilk to keep a roster spot stashed away for the Jordan Smiths, the Alex Constanzas, the Caden Samuels, if they do choose to come. But you're such a long way away from decisions for some of these kids. You just got to keep irons in the fire.
Yeah, and I think an important point that you've made here before, you touch on there, just how crucial and different the transfer portal and sort of recruiting landscape might look in a year or two once once we phase out this COVID year. Obviously, things are still a little bit in flux with NIL and the new transfer rules, but there does seem to be this market inefficiency at the high school level as coaches turn to the transfer portal for to fill 1 or 2 spots a year as opposed to, or more. So I think your point about, how that changes after the COVID year and how you we expect that Cooley and staff will focus more on high school guys moving forward, I think makes a lot of sense. And Caldwell seems like the type of guy that you want to build your program over a couple years. He's a 2, 3, 4 year player that can help build a program along with guys like Caleb Williams and Kayvon Mulready, guys we'll talk about today.
Yeah, I think, and he's of the ilk of a 4-year player. He's not a supreme athlete. He's not extremely large for his size, even though we did just give him some props for what his body could grow into. So, and yeah, if you can keep those guys and you end up having them as upperclassmen with 3 or 4 years in your program, that in itself is a real market inefficiency as well right now. There are only a few programs in the country that are keeping groups together for 2, 3, 4 years on end. And the programs that are having a lot of success. Those programs, UConn, Purdue, Houston, Marquette, there's a lot of value in that. Even there's a lot of value in being able to go into the portal and say, hey, we need one guy instead of saying we need four, and having your guys be a part of your weight program, your culture for years on end. So hopefully they pull it off, but you also have to thread a needle there because you have to be willing, especially in this day and age, to cut bait with kids that might never be at the level to really contribute and really help you out.
Yeah. Well, it's a good transition to talk about our returning guys. And as I was putting this list together, struck me there's not a lot of them that played big minutes last year. You've got 2 guys who really played consistent minutes. We'll talk about all the guys though, and I've sort of broken them up into 3 groups. You've got your year 2 sophomores, so your sort of traditional sophomores. Kayvon Mulready didn't play a lot last year, had some injuries, and then Caleb Williams, who, if anybody cares, I am fully on board the Caleb Williams bandwagon, have always been on Caleb Williams Island. I'll go to bat for him. Then you've got your redshirt bigs, not all of them red shirts. I'm not sure exactly where their eligibility is, but you've got Seal Juf, Jaden Fort, and Julius Halefanua. And then you've got your stud, the focal point of the returning players, which is Malik Mack. And we'll take all of these guys in turn, ask for your reflections, maybe give a grade for the guys that you can. Incomplete is a perfectly reasonable a grade to give guys who we didn't see much of, if any, last year. Then we'll look at where you think how they're going to contribute for 2025, and we'll play a little game at the end to get the brainstorm juices flowing. Let's start with our year 2 sophomores. Kayvon Mulready, again, last year just spot minutes, really not consistent, had some injuries, looked at one point, had announced that he was going to transfer this offseason, and it seems like Ed and staff really convinced him to stay. Originally a Providence recruit that Ed was able to convince to come over to Georgetown, kind of a big point guard, but we haven't seen much from him at the college level. Any reflections or thoughts on his 2024 season?
Tough to give a grade on Kayvon. I think he gets the most incomplete grade of probably anybody on the roster last year.
Yeah.
Maybe outside of Julius. I still hold out a little bit of hope because he came in with such a pretty solid reputation, really good high school player in New England, solid AAU player, did a little bit of everything at the high school ranks, was a good passer, good defender, good rebounder, has a record of shooting it well, again, in the high school ranks, although when we saw him last year, was very inconsistent. Certainly a willing shooter. When he did get his minutes, he was okay putting it up, but the form itself probably left a little bit to be desired. But I don't blame Kayvon for playing out of rhythm at all last year. He didn't really have the minute run out to establish any sort of rhythm. We'll see if he gets a chance this year. He's one that's going to be basically pitted up against Jeremiah Williams, potentially even Deshaun Harris-Smith for bench guard minutes. And those are 2 guys with the pedigree of contributing bench and starting level minutes on decent to good high major teams. So he's got a tall task to supplant one of those guys in the rotation.
Yeah, I think the biggest question for him is just, is he going to get an opportunity? And if and when he does, what can he do with that opportunity in probably very limited minutes? He's not going to get a lot of looks. Hopefully he gets 1 or 2, and can he really break through? But from just coming out of high school, he was a kid who was encouraging, I think, for his his offensive upside, but really, really solid defender. Didn't see much of that last year. Obviously, not his fault, didn't play enough, but we just don't know. We don't know what he's going to be or if he'll get a shot.
Yeah, it was unfortunate that he seemed to be battling injuries not only during last year, but during last year's offseason. Never really got a chance to establish himself in the rotation because had he did, he probably would have gotten a lot of those minutes when Epps was dealing with a lower body injury and maybe played himself into a bigger role and into a role on this year's team. But yeah, he's going to have to, like I just said, he's going to have to either take advantage of an opportunistic injury this year or really kick somebody's butt in the weeks leading up to the season in practice. But I will say that if someone were to get injured and he was your 10th, 11th guy on the roster, that's a good 10th or 11th guy to have. You know, a guy with pedigree, a guy that doesn't limit you at all defensively, will have the size and athleticism to keep up on that end. So should be a useful player if he gets the chance to contribute.
Let's move now to Caleb Williams. 29 games played last year, also had some injuries throughout the year, particularly late, had a concussion that I think kept him out of a couple games late and sort of plateaued his progress. He was a guy who came in and was a starter in place of Sorber at times. Played a lot of minutes in games and showed a lot. Like I said, I am a huge Caleb Williams fan. We'll go into that. His, just looking at a couple of his stats that jumped out at me from CBB Analytics, his, an all-inclusive stat is regular adjusted plus minus, which is just a measure of his impact on the game and individual plays as a whole. He was in the 64th percentile in all of college basketball. It's not great, but for a freshman who, we didn't have a ton of expectations for, that's pretty good. A lot of that impact was on the defensive end for him. He the team had a 99.3 defensive rating when he was on the floor, 107.2 when he was off. That's the difference is in the 87th percentile in all of college basketball. So he had a big impact there. How do you grade out his 2024 season?
I saw it the same way that you did. He probably wasn't totally ready to play right away and thus didn't really get the chance to establish himself in the rotation in non-conference play. But with a couple of injuries, he really proved that he could be the fifth guy out there without being a weak link, especially come conference play. To add on to the stats that you gave, he had the third best net rating on the team in conference play behind Sorber and Curtis Williams, actually. And he was about a plus 11, plus 12, and the team was about a plus 6 with him off. So roughly a 6-point difference. The major difference, though, they were 14 points better per 100 possessions defensively with him on the court in conference play.
Yeah.
So what I saw from him was a kid that might not have been there totally yet, skill-wise or experience-wise or even athleticism-wise. Definitely still has to get quicker laterally. But a kid whose brain and understanding of how to play the game was there. And when he was healthy, his motor didn't turn off. He brought it every night. And I think he established a really good starting point from a freshman that could lead into a really good player eventually as an upperclassman.
There were times last year where it almost looked like it was tough for Coach Cooley to take him off the floor. Not because he was doing anything all that remarkable, but because he just knew how to play. He was a solid defensive player, and he usually, more often than not, made the right play on the offensive end, keeping the ball moving, taking open shots when he got them, made some of those. He would play the second most minutes on the team behind Micah Peavy in some games where he just couldn't come off the floor.
Yeah, if you wanted to look at a one game where you could really see the impact of Caleb, it was probably that Xavier home game they won.
Yeah.
Where he was awesome on the offensive glass, got them a couple extra possessions that turned into baskets. Those really rear its head when you win a game by one possession or by two possessions. A guy that can get you 2 to 3 offensive rebounds, especially on those longer ones, and save a possession is valuable. He had a 7% offensive rebound rate, which is pretty darn good for a guy who was kind of playing as a glorified guard. Offensively, he wasn't in the post. He was perimeter, wing extended, trying to give an illusion or a threat of a shooter. I do think he can shoot it a little better than he did last year. And if you do want to look into ancient history, albeit not that fond history for Georgetown fans, the two previous Sidwell friend guys that made an impact in the Big East, Josh Hart and Sadiq Bey, both had monster shooting jumps from their freshman and sophomore years. Hart went from shooting 31% from three to 47, which is remarkable given that now he can't make a shot in the NBA. And Sadiq Bey went from 38% to 45%, which, he's not the player of either of those two guys. Those two guys ended up being NBA players for a long time. But I do think he has a lot of traits comparable to those guys in terms of understanding the game, in terms of work ethic. And if he does make that jump as a perimeter shooter while also doing some of the little things that he's shown capable of, again, he'll be a really good player.
So what are your expectations for him for this upcoming season with the roster? How does he fit in? What are you looking for?
Well, I'm a little nervous about the size if they ask him to be a full-time power forward, which they might because they're going to want to play a lot of three guards. However, I say that, and last year I wanted him to be the power forward out there the gross majority of the time. So I don't think the size will be too much of an issue, or at least I hope not. But what I expect is that he gets the first crack or the lion's share minutes at the power forward position, and depending on how he does or how the team does as a whole, will determine where they pivot off that and how big or how small they're willing to play. He's the type of player that if he has really good players around him, he's going to be really good connective tissue, and he'll be a big positive regardless of what position he's playing. But he also may be the type of guy that if we are struggling to really score and if we do have some marginal talent around him, he might not stand out so much, and some of those smaller winning plays don't get magnified in the same way. So another guy that I think has a lot of variance, but I have high expectations and high hopes for, because one, I think he's going to shoot it well, and two, I think he's going to get the chance to play the most minutes of all those wing forwards in the rotation, like Isaiah Abraham and Jaden Fort.
Let's jump to what I'm calling the redshirt bigs. Two of them did not play last year. One of them we'll get to played very sparingly, and we've talked a lot about him. But let's start with Seal Joof. For folks who do not know who Seal Joof is, you should follow Georgetown Twitter, because every so often we get a big Seal highlight from practice where he just looks like an absolute monster. Excited to see if he factors into the plans this year. He's listed as a 6'9" center, was a 3-star according to 24/7 Sports coming out of high school. Don't know a lot about him, to be honest.
Personally, I love him. I don't think he's going to be really part of the rotation unless something goes wrong with Iwachukwu or Halifanoa, especially health-wise. So maybe he beats one of those guys out and plays, but the skill set and the size that he has is like classic Cooley. He's pretty huge for his frame. He looks all of 260 pounds on 6'8", 6'9", especially from some of those pictures and videos that are coming out of summer practice. And definitely an under-recruited kid coming from the Netherlands. Played a really, really low level of high school basketball out in California before he reclassed up to come to campus. But if you did catch any of his high school stuff, he's pretty light on his feet, kind of has a real good back to the basket scoring package, scores over each shoulder. And he's the type of guy that I don't think you might see a lot of him until he's a third, fourth year in the program guy. But you take that guy and you put him with Cooley for 3 or 4 years, with Ken White for 3 or 4 years, and get his body totally right. I think if he's a guy that's willing to be retained and progress within the apparatus of the program, I think he's going to eventually have a good career here.
I'm here for that. Let's talk about the other guy, Jaden Fort. Again, did not play last year, but local kid, played at Jackson and Reed High School, 6'9", power forward. Here's the scouting report coming out of high school on him from 24/7 Sports, Adam Finkelstein. Jaden Ford is a high upside forward with obvious physical tools, boasts a terrific frame that should really explode in the college weight room. Work in progress skill set, signs of a mid-range, straight line driving ability. Biggest variable for him is his motor. What do you know about Jaden Ford?
I think that he was the perfect type of ad at the end of the recruiting cycle last year. They weren't looking for somebody that was going to be in their rotation. They were looking for somebody to sit and hopefully progress within the player development apparatus. And everything that you read about his profile there kind of checks out. Physical freak, long. His arms look huge now after 12 months, 18 months in the program. And he's another one that I don't totally know if he'll have a role this year, but a guy that if you can retain and develop within the program could eventually be a really useful player. When he was in high school, he played at Jackson Reed, DC school, kind of played a de facto center for them. He played against Sorber in high school and actually defended him very well, about as well as Sorber got defended in his senior year of high school. And if he does end up becoming an impact high major player in college, it'll be mostly on that end. But again, it's so with no evidence on these guys, and especially with a lower high school rating tagged to them, it's hard to jump over the moon and predict the world for these guys. But if you were to convince yourself on Fort, it's pretty easy. Comes in with a body that looks like when Cooley brought Ben Bentel in a decade ago, and even though he was under recruited, Texas A&M offered him, and Buzz Williams kind of has been IDing guys that look like that and played like that for 10 years.
Yeah.
So he's probably going to have a better chance than Seal to playing himself in the rotation, especially if the 4 position leaves a little bit to be desired. And I guess we'll see. Hopefully the rest of the team offensively is good enough that you don't really need him on that end.
Yeah, you mentioned, we've talked about the 4 position being a little bit of a hole on this team. And you mentioned Caleb Williams probably getting the first and biggest crack at that. How far down do you think Jaden Fort is right now on the depth chart for that power forward spot? Do you think he's a guy who's going to get a look early on, or is going to have to wait for injuries or his moment to shine?
I think it depends on how the staff sees Caleb and Isaiah Abraham. And if they see those guys as guys that are going to play some 3 rather than 4, then he's definitely going to get a shot. We also haven't seen enough of Isaiah Abraham at the college level to know where he is compared to a Jaden Ford. But I'm expecting that he's going to play. I am. And I heard some good things about him last year, especially compared to the power forwards that we did have last year. That he may have been right there, if not better than them in practice. And if that's his baseline, he'll probably contribute.
Yeah. Let's talk about Julius Halef-Fanua. We have a whole podcast episode on Julius after his run in the FIBA World Cup. So we'll keep this fairly straightforward. We'll link to that in the show notes here so that folks can go listen to that to get even more thoughts. But obviously Julius gets hurt after, 3 games?
I think he played 6.
6 games. Didn't play a lot, looked promising, had to get the body right. Any big picture takeaways from the 2024 season that you think that you have about Julius?
From last year?
Yeah.
I don't think anything to take away. I think if you were to take away things, it was 2 things. That 1, he just wasn't ready yet. And 2, I don't think it was a skill issue. It was that he was just out of shape and didn't have a preseason at all. Yeah. What I'm expecting this year is for him to be a heck of a lot lighter, be able to be put in a position to use that skill set that he has, that kind of pretty refined offensive game. And I think I'm pretty well on the record that I think Vince is going to be ahead of him to start the season. Physically, defensively, what Cooley and the staff require out of a center. But I think I'm also on the record that he's going to be an exceptional college player if you get him for a couple of years. And what to keep an eye on is just how he looks in November, body-wise. If he looked great at FIBA, but he was a skinny great, which is definitely the first step in getting back in shape. But he does need to put on some muscle mass. And if he does put on some muscle mass, then he should be pretty ready from the get-go.
Yeah. Again, we've got a full episode on Julius, so we're not going to dive too deep into him here. Come back to him in a bit. I've been speeding through this a little bit because we got to get to the big picture here, and the guy that I think everybody's got probably the most questions about, if not the, up there on the list on this roster, and that's Malik Mack. They bring him in last year as a sophomore after his freshman year at Harvard. Local kid, went to Harvard, just blew up the Ivy League, transfers to Georgetown, first year, starts, carries a heavy load. Couple of things that jumped out to me and just the basic stats, and I know you've got more on it, I think. So his overall net rating for the season, he was the team was his net rating, the team's net rating when he was on was 3.5, off was 4.2. So the team a little bit better when he was off the floor. The reason for that is the difference defensively. The team's defensive rating when he was on the floor was 105.2. When he was off, it was 97. So the team was just better defensively without him on the floor. He played obviously a lot of minutes last year. Offensive rating, if you just isolate that, the difference 108.7 when he was on, 101.7 when he was off. That difference is in the 81st percentile in all of college basketball. And the place where he statistically really shined was his assists. And assists per 40 minutes is almost averaging 5 assists per 40 minutes. That's in the 89th percentile of all college basketball. Let's start with your takeaways from last year and how you might grade his performance.
Starting from the beginning, I think he was an absolute critical get by the staff. That type of kid who, from the DMV, who goes to a mid-major, seemingly prioritizes academics, crushes it. You have to be the type of school that he wants to come back and play for. And I'm very glad that they prioritized him and got him on campus. That being said, when you have a team that has 2 players drafted in the top 40 and you don't really sniff the NCAA tournament, you have to look around at the other parts and ask, where were you limited? I say that, and I know Sorber missed 8 games and they went 2-6 in those 8 games in the regular season, but they weren't an NCAA tournament team even prior to his injury. Now, when a team is limited like that, or maybe underachieves their talent, typically you look at the coach, but I don't have a whole lot of qualms with how Cooley went about last year.
Yeah.
And if you look past the coach, where you look next is probably the point guard. And I'm going to be critical of Malik here, but I'm also going to be complimentary of him going forward. So bear with me. But I think you can be really critical of what he was last season. Like you said, with all those statistics, they were better with him off the floor than with him on the floor. Actually, in Big East play, the discrepancy was even larger. They were 6.4 points per 100 better adjusted with him off the floor. And much of that's in part to how much they kicked Creighton's ass with him out. But I don't think it was a total coincidence that when he sat and they played big and they played physical, they punched people in the mouth. Now, I say that, but he was actually, I think, a better defensive player than I expected. He held his own with most Big East point guards. He played really well against Xavier defensively. He kicked McKnight's butt. But where he really kind of let you down was offensively. And when you paired him and Epps, they had to be elite offensively together. One of them had to be a mismatch nightmare that was taking advantage of it every night, and they just weren't. And Malik is a better shooter and a better passer than how he played. Now, in Big East play, he really, really shot poorly. He shot 34% from the field, 28% from three on nearly 6 attempts per game, and only 76% from the line, which is a solid mark, but he consistently shot better than that at Harvard. The weird thing about that is he had a similar phenomenon at Harvard where he kind of stunk up the joint in Ivy League play after killing in the beginning of the season. In Ivy League play, even though he was one of the best players in the league, he shot 37% from the field and 25% from three as a freshman. So you look at that, and maybe that's a little bit of a red flag of him as a shooter, or his ability to withstand the minute load and the bumps and bruises of a 32-game season. In non-conference, Malik was good. He shot it like 41% from three. He didn't really turn the ball over a ton, at least compared to how he did in Big East play. And then if you include the Crown, he really shot the hell out of it. But I do want to address even more concerns beyond the shooting. You noted his assists per 40 was pretty good. Yes, because he played 36, 37 minutes a game and the ball was in his hands numerous times.
Yeah.
His assist rate was actually down 11% from Harvard, which is worrisome, especially because his turnover rate went up 3%, and he ended up leading Georgetown amongst all qualifiers. But I say that saying that he can be a better passer.
Yeah.
As a freshman, he was like elite. He was top 35 in the country in assist rate. He was one of 6 guys in the whole country with a 33+% assist rate and a turnover rate less than 16%. And some of those other guys are in the NBA right now. Isaiah Stevens, Jamal Shed, all of the guys that are in that list were really, really good college point guards. So you need him to get back to that, where he's a high-level passer that doesn't turn the ball over. You need him to tap into some of that inconsistency he has as a shooter and become a guy that's consistently 35 to 40% from beyond the arc, a guy that's a little more efficient from inside 2-point land. He needs to learn when he can get all the way to the rim and when he needs to pull up and make a floater. And the last thing is he's got to get to the line. He didn't last year. His free throw rate went down 16%. So all that being said, I think he took a somewhat of a major step back from Harvard that really hurt you last year, but that is somewhat to be expected when a kid goes from Ivy League to Big East play, when a kid is 175 pounds, and when you ask the kid to play 37 minutes per game and have the ball in his hand for the majority of the time. Now, reason for optimism. He's going to be bigger, and they're going to have a lot of guards this year where I don't think he's going to need to be a primary point guard all the time. They can play him off ball. They can get him moving. They can hopefully design some of these plays to get him some standstill jump shots. And if you get him going, not only as a facilitator, but as a scorer, he could be the guy that becomes the engine on that end. I also think that he did make progress at the end of the year, just understanding what he could get away with and what he couldn't.
Yeah.
He still shot it like shit. His last 6 games of the year in the Big East, he shot 33% from the field and 26% from three. But the team's offensive rating for those 6 games was 121 with him on the floor compared to a 93 with him off the floor. And this is with no Sorber. Yeah. And that's because he took care of the ball. In his last 6 games, he had 24 assists and only 10 turnovers. Again, I'm saying all of this as there are moments in there where you can totally convince yourself he's going to be one of the best point guards in the Big East. If all of it clicks together where he takes care of the ball, has the physical strength to handle the load that they're going to ask him, and just shoots it a little better and, shows off those facilitating traits that he showed off in Harvard. And if he does all that, then your team's going to be totally fine. Then I have basically no worries about the team if Malik's a top 2 3-point guard in the league.
That was awesome.
Yeah, I hope that wasn't too long-winded or zigzag too much to follow, but try to get it all out at once. But basically, the kid has the ability to be really good.
I mean, I think
it's just got to come together.
Yeah, it's indicative and is very true to how important Malik is to this team, how important he was last season. That jump from Harvard to the Big East is a big jump, particularly for a point guard, particularly for a point guard who's maybe cracking 6'2" and has, is 175 pounds, as you mentioned. That's a tough jump. They asked a lot from him. He could have been better, but showed some positive things. And I think the proof is in Cooley and staff doubling down on him, saying, no, this is our guy going. We want him back. We want to build around him as that starting point guard. We're going to bring in guys who can help him and can maybe take some of the pressure off of him. But all signs point to this being this could be Malik's team by the end of the year. A lot of things can happen, but there's definitely that potential. So he is one of the, if not the most important piece. I'm with you there. What's going on with the shooting?
So if I could add one last thing there, just on the point you made. One, I think you are right that the staff probably decided Malik over Epps, and I think that's the right choice. Two, Cooley at the end of the season was extremely complimentary to Mack. In one of those press conferences, whether it was Washington State or Nebraska, he said that if Malik comes back, he's going to be one of the best point guards in the country next year, which Cooley blows smoke better than anybody. But that is a very good vouch of confidence from your coach. Also is a coach who's really developed some good point guards in his 15 years at Providence, some of which weren't very good players as underclassmen, like a Kyron Cartwright, who ended up being a really good player. But to the shooting, I really can't tell you because he made some really, really tough shots. And he missed some just wide open bunnies where it doesn't look like he's in a rhythm if it's too much of an easy shot. That being said, there's value in being a tough shot maker, and he's streaky as all hell. Once he sees one or two go through the hoop, he can get unconscious, as seen in the Xavier game, as seen in the two Crown games. Now, he just needs to become a guy. I don't even think it's a guy that needs consistent mechanics or consistent looks. I think he just needs to be a guy that just is a little bit of a better player, because he just runs so hot that if he's a better player, making better decisions, scoring in easier fashions, getting to the line more often, it's okay to be a front runner if you're really good. And if how I envision the shot changes, is that he shoots it better just because he plays better.
To me, he looks like a guy who wanted to make the right play and really, really cared last season and carried some of that weight on him as he played, and probably had a lot of it, as you said, on his shoulders, particularly with Epps in and out of the lineup at times, with Sorber going down. He was asked to do probably more than was expected coming in, and looked like he played with it. And I think that was sort of my reaction to the Crown when he went off. It just looked like he was playing looser and had a little bit more freedom. Obviously, the team was down a bunch of guys. They were playing in this brand new tournament that seems largely fake. It's whatever it is, playing with a little bit less pressure on you, and it looked like it did him some good. I'm confident, cautiously optimistic, as you are, I think, but it to me, it comes down to, is he gonna shoot it 35% from three, 33% from three, higher, or is it going to be sub 30%?
I'm even wavering more towards confidence rather than cautious optimism.
Love it.
He, like you said, he runs hot. And he's a fiery kid, and sometimes you lose your head. So there's positives and negatives to that. But you're going to lose your head when you're a sophomore playing high major basketball for the first time for your hometown school. Your family, your friends are in the crowd. What I took from it, though, is that he's competitive as all hell, and that he cares. And kids that are that competitive and care that much figure it out. He's just got to hopefully figures it out this year, not next year.
All right, let's play a little game here. Another one that I made up, and we're going to see if it works. Fill in the blank So we're going to go through this list of guys, and we're going to say if Georgetown is a tournament team next year, X player is what? So, for example, if Georgetown is a tournament team, Malik Mack is a all Big East first teamer. I'm giving you the broad universe. It can be anything that you want. Who is this guy on the best version of this team next year?
Gotcha.
Let's start with Kayvon Mulready. Who is Kayvon Mulready on the best version of Georgetown?
The best version of Georgetown has role players that are so good that Kayvon doesn't get on the floor, which is sad to say. I really, really like Kayvon, but if Jeremiah Williams and Deshaun Harris-Smith are just light years better than him, and both those guys probably need to play a little bit better than they have in the past years to do that, that would indicate a healthy team.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. Caleb Williams. Who is Caleb Williams on the best version of Georgetown?
40% three-point shooter.
Love that. I think he's got that in him, frankly.
I do too. He's the type of guy that's not going to have bad looks. You know, they're never going to be at the end of a shot clock saying, here's the ball, Caleb, go figure something out. Just got to take advantage of his opportunities. And I do think even if he doesn't shoot it, he'll do enough things that he doesn't hurt you. But if we're doing the, Georgetown takes a step that nobody predicts, Caleb shoots the shit out of it.
Yeah. I will say by the end of the year, before he went out with the concussion, I was about as comfortable with him taking an open three as anybody on the team. I was pretty confident that was a good look, that he was going to take the right shot, and that it was probably going in.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. He's catch and shoot, open look. It's a repeatable shooting motion. He was pretty reliable on those.
Yeah. Seal Joof.
Another one that if your team's really, really good, he doesn't play because Vince and Julius are just awesome.
Yeah. I have a slight amendment to that. I am in full agreement, but to me, he is the big Gouda next year because he is from Gouda, Netherlands. And I just want to see the banners. I want to hear people yelling the big cheese. He's the big Gouda next year on a Georgetown tournament team.
I mean, his name's Seal. I think you could run with that one pretty easily.
I like Gouda better. I think Seal is too obvious.
I don't know. He's got some blubber on him though.
Jaden Fort.
All right, this is tough because I think on the best version, I wouldn't say that the best version of Georgetown probably doesn't need Jaden Fort, but the best version of Jaden Fort, if something weird clicks, he's a guy that might end up on a guy that at the end of the year, he's on future draft boards.
Wow.
Not just on 6'9".
Yeah,
he's probably got like a 7'3" wingspan.
Yeah.
And there's not gonna be a single physical limitation with him. It's just all gonna be about basically two things: whether he can put the ball in the hoop at all, and if it's there between the ears, the defensive instincts. If he could be a guy that plays 15 minutes a game and is still catches the eye of the NBA just because of the kind of makeup of the type of player he is. He's what they're looking for if it clicks.
All right, Big Julius.
They're an NCAA tournament team. Man, yeah. Best 2 or 3 freshmen in the Big East. Some replication of what Sorber provided last year.
Yeah.
Beats out Vince. Although I think Vince could also have this weird little uptick that gets him to the NCAA tournament in a perfect world. But, they got to find lightning in a bottle at the 5.
I think, to me, it's on the best version of this Georgetown team, one of Julius or Vince is in that all Big East team.
Agreed. Agreed. An NCAA tournament, Georgetown has their point guard and their center, whoever those come to be, are top 4 in their position in the league.
Yeah. That tees us up nicely for our last guy on NCAA tournament Georgetown team. What is Malik Mack?
Right there. Let's say top 3 point guard in the Big East.
Yeah.
Won't say that he has to be all conference. Conference is going to have I usually say the conference is going to have a lot of good guards. There actually might not be that many this year.
Georgetown has a lot of guards. Maybe not a lot of all-conference guards, but they've got a lot of guards.
Screw it. I'll say, if Malik Mack is all Big East, we are playing in the NCAA tournament.
I'm with you on that. Final impressions on the roster as a whole. So thinking about how this whole roster is coming together before we see it mostly complete. There may be a couple guys who are not playing next week. We'll see how that goes. But what do you think this roster is? What are the strengths of this roster as a whole?
So I know we all had expectations that year 3 was the year that Cooley and company was off and running. I think we all had expectations going into the offseason that the portal haul and the returners might look a little better than it did. That being said, what this roster looks like to me, even if kind of assembled in a pivot way, it's very emblematic of some of the old Cooley Providence teams.
Yeah.
Now in year 3, I know we probably didn't want to be totally just resembling old school Providence, but Cooley took some rosters that were not of NCAA caliber and got to the NCAA tournament. Cooley took those rosters and won 12-13 Big East games. He took those rosters and made kids that their talent didn't really jump off the page, made them into all Big East type guys. I think that's what you got to hope for here. Yeah. That this team takes on the characteristics of their coach, that they play their ass off defensively, that they, even if outclassed talent-wise, that they're just a nuisance for every team that gets them. Defense travels. You got 20 Big East games. If you show up physically up for the challenge on all 20 games, that's what the Big East is. You'll win more than you lose. Seton Hall with Willard, Providence with Cooley. They've been doing, now Marquette with Shaka. They've been doing this for a decade in this conference. Again, I think it's totally fair to be somewhat underwhelmed with the level of talent on this team. But I think the team has a chance. Also has a chance to be not great, but it has a chance to find something. And welcome to Georgetown, Justin Caldwell. And as always, Hoyas.
Hoyas.